Brought to you by the United States Marine Corps.
Hey guys, welcome into the SCPI Laxcast Southern Section edition. I am Sarah Chafee, joined as always by our lead analyst, Jim Loftus. Twitter names down here. You can follow us, talk to us, and keep up with all things lacrosse. This is going to be a fun podcast because, hey, it's playoffs time. So we have a lot to talk about. We're going to be doing things a little bit different, and we're going to spend some time previewing the games for you guys. We're going to go through the brackets, talk about first-round matchups, and let you guys know all the things you need to know. We have a wealth of knowledge right here in Jim Loftus, so we're excited. Right? Are you pumped, Jim?
I'm pumped. But I'm also a bit worn out. We've talked about it before. The lacrosse season's a grind. It's all packed into 8 weeks, and then this playoff tournament is all packed into this week. First rounders today, second rounders already on Thursday, and we're down to the semifinals by Saturday. So it goes by really fast, and this is four 16 team brackets. So there's a lot of teams to try to keep track of, and a lot of matchups to try to figure out what's what. So we'll start looking at each bracket. As we've said before, it's divided up into sort of the LA half and the Orange County half, and then the champions of each of those brackets meet for the overall de facto Southern Section Championship. So we'll try to walk through it that way and help you sort out what's what.
Absolutely. And not only will we be talking about it here, but you can also head to maxlaxoc.com because Jim and his crew are doing write-ups, correct, of every game.
We're going to do our best. Like I said, there's 8 games in each bracket starting today, so 32 games to report on starting later this evening and into tomorrow morning. As far as the game reports go, on the LA section, MaxLax LA, I managed to write up game previews on all 8 boys games heading into this afternoon's play. And then on down in OC, we had Matt Armstrong, I believe is former Newport Harbor girls coach, wrote up an extensive look at the OC girls bracket as well. So a lot of information to digest as games get underway today, and then we'll get as many write-ups done tomorrow and explain how some of these games went down as soon as we can.
Right, and what's also cool about MaxLax OC is if you go to their website, they actually have the brackets up on the top. You'll see, and you can check out all the brackets there. So that's where you can follow along as well as we talk about each matchup. So speaking of, let's start with the LA boys matchups. We have Loyola taking on Santa Monica. What's going on there? What's a big takeaway from that one, Jim?
Well, the big takeaway from that is twofold. One, Loyola has gone wire to wire and held that number 1 spot all season. Their losses came out of area, not to any LA teams. A couple losses to OC teams, but none in LA. They are the two-time defending LA champion, so deserving of that number 1 seed. Santa Monica is an up-and-coming program, made the playoffs for the first time last year, and is back again, but they have a tall task ahead of them facing Loyola.
Absolutely. And I kind of just want to work through the first round matchups here. Westlake is taking on San Marcos. What do you see there?
Westlake is a really high-scoring team. We've talked about them all year. They've got 3 players who have have 90 points, have scored 90 points combined assists and goals. They're young in certain areas though, and their goalkeepers are young. Their face-off guy is young. But they have some experience in the offensive end and in the defensive end. So they're tough, and they'll be a good matchup for San Marcos, which is only in its 5th year of playing CIF lacrosse and is did not make this tournament last year, even though they went, I think, 12-2 in the regular season. But played a tougher schedule this year. Went 13-2, I think it was 14-2. And they're here, and they earned a 9 seed, very, very nearly jumping up into that top 8 and getting a home game. So good for them. That'll be a good matchup. San Marcos is I think better on the defensive end than the offensive end. So that'll be a good test for them against a high scoring Westlake team. Then
we have Agora taking on Miracosta, Miracosta. What do you see there, Jim?
Agora's hot. They won their last 6 in a row to claim the Marmani League. Miracosta's had a little bit of an up and down season, but they're a strong team nonetheless. So I don't believe these teams have actually faced each other in about 6 years. Looking back through the records, so it's hard to look back and see what kind of history they have. But Agora, comes in hot, earned the number 5 seed and the home game there. So the winner of that one will play the winner of Palisades at Chaminade. Chaminade got the 4 seed. They actually opened their season against Palisades way back in February. So this is a rematch. Both teams have come a long way since then, so it'll be curious to see if Palisades is up to this challenge. Chaminade won that one in the early going fairly easily, but Palisades scores a lot of goals, has a good face-off kid, so they could challenge Chaminade's tough zone defense.
Right, something we've talked about all season. Then moving down, Oak Park's taking on Sierra Canyon. In another first round matchup, what do you see there too, Jim?
That's another rematch. These teams just played a couple weeks ago. Oak Park won that one. Sierra Canyon has a very good goalie. I think he had 20 saves against Oak Park the first time, and he's been in the 18, 19, 20 save range a number of games. Problem is he faces a ton of shots. The Sierra Canyon defense gives up a lot of good looks on goal, and Oak Park has the shooters that can take advantage of that. Oak Park is also probably better defensively than offensively, but I think the score last time was 12-8, so I would expect this one to be in the similar range.
And then the winner of that will take on the winner of Harvard Westlake Thousand Oaks, and Harvard Westlake is a team that has been in our top 10 majority of the season, if not the whole season. Correct?
Yeah, they're a very good team. They did pick up a number of losses this year, but they were all to good teams. I don't think they had a what you would call a bad loss to a team that they should have beaten. So they're a very talented team. They play very fast. They hustle. They win ground balls to gain possessions. And they're smart. They know what to do with it as soon as they pick it up. They're very opportunistic in cashing in on transition plays, unsettled plays. If you make a mistake, they'll get the ball and it's in your end quickly. Your defense is under duress. They beat Chaminade twice in the last minute. Once scoring with about 30, 40 seconds left to force overtime, and then won it in overtime. And then the second time around in the playoffs a week ago, Mission League playoffs a week ago, they scored twice in the final minute to pull out another 1-goal victory. So they're never out of it if they can, if they can be within striking distance, then they're a threat.
Very clutch team. Yep.
But Thousand Oaks is a really interesting story too. They were ranked 7th in the preseason coaches poll in LA. But faced a really tough schedule, and they lost one of their star attackmen to an injury in the opening game of the season. He missed the next 10. By the time he came back, I think they were like 1-9 or something, 1-10, and they fell almost all the way out of the top 20. He came back. They won a couple games late. That's Spencer Winery that we're talking about. He just recently committed to play Division II lacrosse at Westminster in Salt Lake City. But that changed their offense. They also got a transfer eligible in the 1st of April, and that improved their offense. So suddenly they won a couple games at the end. They upset Oak Park. So this rematch will probably look very different than the first time they played way back in early March. So that's if there's going to be an upset in the first round, it's hard to imagine a 14 beating a 3. But Thousand Oaks is not your ordinary 14 seed.
We'll have to take note of that. And then as we make our way to the bottom of our first round matchups, we have Oaks Christian taking on Crespi. And then we'll get to our last first round matchup here in a second. But what's your takeaway from that matchup?
Oaks Christian Crespi is another rematch, the third one in this half of the bracket. Oaks beat Crespi pretty handily in the regular season. It was a tight game at halftime, but Oaks got its offense rolling, got its ball movement clicking, and just ran away from the Celts in the third quarter. And so if Crespi can solve its defense and figure out how to protect the backside when Oaks starts spinning the ball around the perimeter, they'll have a chance. Crespi did get better throughout the year, but has not played a full 4 quarters against a good team. They've been able to hang with teams until halftime, but then something comes unraveled and the game slips away from them. So that'll be interesting, an interesting rematch, which then takes us to the winner of that one will then face either Village Christian, the 15 seed, or Palos Verdes. I think it's safe to say that Palos Verdes is the clear favorite in that one. But Village is a team that just scores a ton of goals. They have a lot of weapons that can they can get off a lot of shots. They have a solid goalie and an excellent face-off kid. So if PV thinks this is a cakewalk, then they could get surprised and and actually end up working for that. That's an early start this afternoon at 3:00. So that'll be probably our first result to come in today.
And like we mentioned, Palos Verdes is the team they've been sitting pretty at that number 1 spot. Definitely have really proved themselves. So it'll be interesting. But never say never. A team can get surprised. So we'll keep our eye on that. So Jim, now I think we should move over to the OC side of things and check out these first round matchups as well. What are some of your big takeaways, and what do you see here in this bracket?
Well, the bracket seems to have, followed the coaches poll fairly closely. The seedings, rather, so you see we've got St. Margaret's, Foothill, Tesoro, and Santa Margarita. Santa Margarita is obviously an interesting story, and we've had conversations about them and conversations with some of our followers on Twitter
Dear
about
friends.
them. But the thing with Santa Margarita is everyone expected them to be really, really good this year. And then they lost games against ranked opponents, and they dropped a little bit in the rankings. They dropped out of the SCPI top 10. And then they got healthy. They had a couple of seniors miss a couple games at different times. So they were, what I'm told is they were never really at full strength. It's that until later in the season, we didn't see the real Santa Margarita. But then they all got healthy, and I believe they're entering the playoffs, with a full complement of players. So they're sitting at number 4. Corona Del Mar is another one at number 5 that played a lot of out of area games and lost some games against bigger local opponents early on, and almost became out of sight, out of mind. So they're another one that I wouldn't sleep on when all you have to do is win one game to advance. So the top half of the bracket, you've got Huntington Beach at St. Margaret's. As St. Margaret's got the number 1 seed, they're probably the clear favorite in the bracket. And then Yorba Linda, the 9 against Great Oak, the 8. So the winner of that game will face more than likely St. Margaret's. I don't like to make predictions, but again, it's rare to see a 16 beat a 1 in a tournament like this. Then also in that top half of the bracket, we have Newport Harbor at Santa Margarita, and then Santiago at Corona Del Mar. So the winners of those 2 games will face each other. And then down the road, whoever comes out of that little foursome will face, again, they're probably looking at St. Margaret's down the road.
Right.
Bottom half of the bracket, Foothill's the number 2 seed, so they've got to have to be the favorite there. And we've talked before about how battle tested they are, playing just about anybody and everybody, and they've taken some lumps, but that's a team that always gets stronger. They're the defending section champs, Orange County champs. Mm-hmm. They lost to Loyola in the section title game. So, again, no surprise to see them there, and it would not be a surprise to see them still there a couple of games from now. They get Elisa Niguel in the first round, and the winner of that one goes on to play the winner of Servite San Clemente. We've talked about San Clemente. They suffered a couple of losses there to end the season. Whether they can recover and play well in the first round of the playoffs, or whether there's some sort of hangover from losing, I think it was 4 games in the last week or 10 days of the season. Servite, I think, is a team that's gotten better, so that's a really interesting 10-7 matchup to pay attention to.
They were on the bubble last week, weren't they?
They were.
Top 10? Yep. So
they were. They're a team that I think everybody expected big things from, and again, they had some losses early, then they had some wins, but then they ended. Again, tough schedule, and it's hard to know whether those losses mean they're not quite as good as everyone thinks, or whether they're very good and just playing a very tough schedule.
Absolutely. That'll be an interesting one as well. Well, let's stay in Orange County, Jim, and take a look at the OC girls bracket.
Before we jump over the girls, I do want to mention Tesoro, because they're a team that has been hanging around in our SCPI rankings all season, right in the middle, not getting a whole lot of attention, but also not losing any games. So we can't necessarily sleep on the Titans and just hand that half of the bracket to Foothill. Tesoro, as a number 3 seed, drew number 14 Los Al in the first round, and if they win that, they advance to either Beckman-Trabuco, to the Beckman-Trabuco winner. So this is, we've talked, Tesoro did not play the toughest schedule. Some of that was out of their hands. They play in a league that is not quite as strong as some other leagues down Orange County. So this is go time for them. Are they really a legit contender to have earned that number 3 seed and not lost a game all year? Or did they play a schedule that allowed them to go undefeated? So we'll find out now. Maybe not in the first round here, but if they get out of that little foursome of beating Los Al and then the winner of Beckman-Trabuco, then they're staring at maybe Foothill, maybe San Clemente, maybe Servite. This is a good time to see what Tesoro's made of.
Absolutely. So, we'll keep an eye on them. A very good storyline. And yes, now we'll stay in the OC area and talk about the girls for some of the first round matchups. As you take a look at the bracket for the OC girls, what do you see, Jim?
Well, as I mentioned, Matt Armstrong, who used to coach at Newport Harbor, wrote up an extensive preview of the girls bracket for us on maxlaxoc.com, and I had a chance to go through that. And the way he described it, in fact, the headline is Powerhouse and Parity. And his point is, as we've talked about all year, there are 3 powerhouse teams on the girls' side in Orange County. St. Margaret's got the number 1 seed, Mater Dei got the number 2 seed, and Foothill is number 3. After that, you could, there's a lot of very even teams.
Yes, as we've seen in the bottom half of our bracket all year long.
Absolutely. So the question is sort of which of those teams from 4 or 5 seeds on down have an opportunity to perhaps jump up and surprise one of the big 3, so to speak. St. Margaret's is number 1 seed, opens with Corona Del Mar in a rebuilding year for the Sea Kings there. The winner of that game will face either San Juan Hills or Beckman. And San Juan, if you remember, was one of those teams that was sort of always 7, 8, 9, 10 in our rankings, and just moving around based on week to week, win one, lose one, win one, lose one.
Right.
So a tough team, and played a pretty decent schedule. So that's the 8-9 game there. Santa Margarita got the 4th seed. They might be a team that could surprise one of the big 3. They open with Los Alamitos, and then Trabuco Hills, another one of those, bottom half of our top 10 teams, is the number 5 seed, and they open with Newport Harbor. As far as upsets, again, I don't like to make predictions, but there is a lot of balance when you're talking about a 5-12 in this scenario. Trabuco at 5 and Newport at 12. So. And the bottom half of the bracket is where it gets really interesting.
Right. And we see Aliso Niguel there taking on University. Aliso has been one of those teams as well, Jim, in the bottom of our top 10, kind of just moving around, with all those teams. So what do you see at the bottom half of this bracket?
Yep, Aliso is the number 6, and they play University today to open the tournament, and the winner of that one plays the winner of Tesoro at Foothill. So this is where two of our big 3 reside. St. Margaret's gets the top half of the bracket sort of to itself among those big 3 teams. Foothill is the 3 seed, and they're in the same bottom half of the bracket as Mater Dei. So Foothill Tesoro in round 1, the winner of that plays University Aliso Niguel winner. Then the other foursome in the bottom half of the bracket, we do find Mater Dei at the number 2 seed taking on El Dorado. And San Clemente at number 7 taking on Esperanza of Anaheim. So again, the bottom half of that bracket has to be, I don't want to say given, but certainly favored to be either Foothill or Mater Dei.
Yeah.
And with those 2 squaring off, this will be Saturday, I guess, in the semifinals.
Wow, that'll be an interesting one if that's how it works out. All right, so let's transition now to the LA girls bracket. Let's work through the top half of the bracket. We see the 16 seed Newbury Park at number 1 seed Redondo Union, and then number 9 seed Oak Park at number 8 Royal.
The Royal Highlanders from Simi Valley, and they're an interesting story in that they're a senior-dominated team who kind of started slowly but has rattled off a bunch of big wins in a row over the last 3-4 weeks of the season, including 2 victories over Oak Park. I think one of them was in overtime. So now they get the 3rd meeting in the 8-9 seed game at Royal. And if Royal can beat the Eagles again, Royal earns a shot most likely at Redondo Union. Not to take anything away from Newbury Park, but again, we've talked before, a 16 beating a 1 in tournaments like this is not likely. So that's one foursome in the top half of the LA bracket. The second foursome in that top half of the bracket is where we see the Kate Rams from Carpinteria that we've talked about, undefeated, earn a home game against Miracosta. So the Mustangs take that long bus ride from Manhattan Beach up to Carpinteria this afternoon. And then the other matchup there is Marlboro at the 5th seed Glendale. And Glendale has made a little bit of a run here late in the season to move up and earn that 5 seed. So Marlboro's an up-and-comer. That'll be a decent game, but it would not be shocking at all to see Kate and Glendale playing next Thursday.
Yep, and as you mentioned, the winners of all those will meet on Thursday. What do you see at the bottom half of the bracket, Jim?
The bottom half of the bracket is the more interesting one. The LA girls. We see Palos Verdes as the number 2 seed. They take on Downey. Downey's another team that we haven't heard a lot from this year, but they've been playing well and winning some games late. PV is sort of a question mark in my mind. When they play well and they have their entire roster together, they're really good. They beat Redondo Union the first time they met. Second time they met, they were beating them fairly handily at halftime, from what I understand. But then their 2 best players left the game with separate injuries, twin sisters, and both ended up getting hurt in the same game. And that opened the door to a Redondo Union comeback. Those same 2 players, the Hoyt sisters, Kelly and Kendall, missed the game against Kate over spring break, and Kate beat Palos Verdes. So what that tells me is that if the Hoyt sisters are there and playing well, then PV is a very good team. If the Hoyt sisters can't get on the field for one reason or another, that PV struggles. Okay. So be interesting to see how that plays out over a short tournament where they're playing Tuesday, potentially Thursday, and potentially Saturday. So that's the one matchup. The winner of Downey Palos Verdes plays the winner of Chaminade at Agora. And again, two very good teams. Chaminade was in the LA final last year against Redondo Union, and Agora has won LA in the past and it has a very strong program. But both teams were really up and down all year. Chaminade was up as high as number 3 or 4 in the LA coaches poll, and then lost a couple games late in the year. They lost to Royal. I believe they lost to Oak Park. I believe they lost a couple games that were surprising. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with Chaminade late in the season, but that's a 10-7 game with two teams that it's hard to know what's going on with both of those teams. Agora had lost a bunch of games early that were surprising, but then suddenly was winning games late. So there may have been an injury or an absence that the roster finally got complete late. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there.
Really one of those games that could go either way.
It could. It's a 10-7, but if Chaminade wins, it wouldn't necessarily be an upset because Chaminade is a strong program.
Right.
The last foursome on that bottom half of the bracket, we have Westlake, which I believe still only lost 1, maybe 2 games this year. I can't remember if they finally lost another late in the year. I think Agora might have actually beaten them. And they are home to this evening against Palisades. And so Westlake's the 3 seed, but a fairly young program and didn't play a super strong schedule. So we'll see how that plays out over the course of a short tournament. And then the last matchup there is Birmingham at number 6 seed West Ranch. West Ranch is another team that really sort of made a run throughout the year and got their results improved as the season went on, and they earned that home game in the first round. So, winner of Birmingham West Ranch will play the winner of Palisades Westlake on Thursday.
Some really interesting first-round matchups that we will be keeping an eye on, and you guys will be covering over at MaxLax. So head over to maxlaxoc.com to check out all the write-ups that they're doing over there. They're keeping a close eye on all these games, and they're gonna provide everything you need to know and your reports. So go head over there and check them out. It'll be interesting, Jim. I'm excited to see how some of these games play out. Some of them, like we mentioned, that can go either way. Or if someone potentially gets surprised, that's something to definitely monitor. So it should be interesting.
I said a couple weeks ago, talking with a couple coaches, that in the LA half of the boys bracket, for example, it would not surprise me to see all the home teams, the first 8 seeds, win and advance. Right. That just seemed to be a clear line of division there between the first 8 and then the next 8. But then the pairings came out, and I look at that Thousand Oaks Harvard Westlake game is very interesting as a 14-3. There was one other one, Palisades, the 13-4 game. Love Chaminade, but they have struggled to put 4 solid quarters together in the same game, and they've had letdowns that have allowed other teams either to come back on them or to pull away from them. And Palisades has an offense; they can score. So suddenly I'm looking at these matchups and thinking there could be a couple of first round upsets, and not predicting one, but it would not. And suddenly it would not surprise me if there was. So it's what makes this interesting.
Yeah, and what makes it kind of fun. We've always said it's high school. Any given day something can happen. So it kind of reminds me of March Madness in a sense. You just don't know. So it'll be fun to keep an eye.
Yeah, and there's a lot to keep track of. There's obviously a lot of teams involved and 25, 30, 40 players on each team. There's a lot going on, and I'm sure we've missed plenty in trying to break down these 4 different tournaments. So let us know what we've missed. Tell us tell us where we're wrong or tell us where we're right. That's always nice to hear too. So.
Absolutely. Yes, we love hearing from you guys. Our Twitter names, mine's Sarah J. Chafee, and then we have J. Lofty over here. So let us know. You can also write in the comment section below, but we do love hearing from you guys. But that does it for our playoff preview. Now we got to get out there and actually enjoy the games and see how this all shakes out. Thank you so much, Jim, for joining us per usual. A wealth of knowledge over here. And don't forget to check out maxlaxoc.com for everything lacrosse, LA, OC, and SD.
All right. Thanks, Sarah.